during his month-long illness and during the past 3 weeks since his death. We've been surrounded by neighbors, friends, new and old, our families, Pete's helpers. I know at least one helper, possibly two, came here from California today. That's a pretty big commitment. Helen's teachers have supported us. You have all sustained and brought comfort to us during these very difficult times. So I'm also filled with gratitude for the time Pete and I had together. I can't believe it ended so soon, but I had the privilege of being married to Pete for 10 years. Over 10 years of marriage to Pete and 3 years of dating him before that, I built up this storehouse of memories. A first date at the Creperie in Providence, handwritten letters from Madrid where he studied abroad, a boyfriend who practiced harmonica when other instruments became impossible, and somehow the helper who shared a room with him didn't quit. There was a graduation party where generations of Pete's family wished us good luck in Texas. We still have pictures of us with cowboy hats that I think Francie got for that adventure. So there were camping trips in Texas hill country among limestone canyons, a dramatic evacuation ahead of Hurricane Rita, a beautiful wedding, tree trimming parties, Rosh Hashanah dinners with friends, vacations together with our families, moving back to the East Coast, and of course Helen's birth and getting to start to watch her grow up together. But what I'm really grateful for aren't just these postcard snapshots, but the daily companionship and interactions we shared. We started mapping out this life together in Providence when we were first dating. We were defining ourselves and who we would be. In Houston, it came together into a real vision of how we wanted to live. And then, of course, it grew to include Helen when we moved back to the East Coast. Pete tried out a lot of different possibilities his first year after college in Houston. He taught English. He tutored math in a pediatric psychiatric facility that was locked. He facilitated a muscular dystrophy support group in Spanish. He took classes that year, too. He registered for an upper-level graduate course in psychology because he thought that that was his calling, even though he had never done any undergraduate work in the field. But he did really well. He was top of the class and earned a totally merit-based scholarship to study social work at the University of Houston. He continued to sing. He joined the Celtic chorus of Houston, looking for an avenue for his sea shanties from the Pirates. He was up there with a group of 40 and 50-somethings, but they welcomed the 22-year-old wheelchair user. He settled on counseling as a career goal at the end of that process, and that was when he started graduate school. I was already an energy journalist, and so combining our circles of friends sometimes produced an eclectic crowd and sometimes produced an awkward party. A Texan journalist who had never been north of the Mason-Dixon line, a social work grad student who was an Iranian Southern Baptist, a top-tier corporate lawyer who had given it all up to reinvent her life as a therapist in Pete's graduate program. Amid our Texas adventures, we navigated the course of living with Pete's muscular dystrophy. We installed an automatic mechanism on our apartment door so he could easily go for meditation strolls in the Japanese garden at nearby Herman Park. We hired new people to help him. We combined ramps into questionably safe ways to get into friends' houses. We enjoyed each other's company, and we shared the challenges from both those trivial issues like building crazy ramps to the more serious, when he was passed over for an internship because of his disability. He got a better one, so it was all right. But we supported each other as we tried out new things. He revived his school's association of students who wanted to be clinical social workers, and I trained for a half marathon. I attended social work talks with him, and he would keep up with me on shorter training runs. He's a little faster than I am, especially now, in the past year. I've been slower. As we moved from Houston to Jersey City, After Pete finished graduate school, there were close friendships from Houston to maintain and new friendships to form. Pete began to work for Dawn, first leading groups and then serving as a case manager for people with traumatic brain injuries. No matter the challenges Pete's job or his life threw at him, he seemed able to catch all of the curveballs. We missed friends from Houston when we first moved here, but the closeness of our families was absolutely critical. Pete was able to be together again with Tommy, from whom he had been inseparable from a young age. And we were there for graduations, for family occasions, for holidays, and of course for those informal moments that mean even more, even if they involved playing Risk, which is basically the longest board game known to man. With the support of Tommy, Pete's family, my family, it was much easier to take on all that we faced. Advanced planning was one of Pete's ways of retaining independence, even as muscular dystrophy encroached on his abilities to move, to eat, to breathe. Tom mentioned the blog post that he queued up before the hospital. That was one of the surprises during his hospital stay. Another was when 150 bottles of the nutritional drink Ensure showed up on my doorstep, because he knew exactly how many he would normally drink each week, and he had pre-programmed them just to arrive. But I benefited from his over-planning too. It was during some extreme planning sessions that he rolled out a packing list I particularly like called Things Jess Forgets. It makes sure that I don't end up on a business trip without socks or pajamas or an umbrella. His unparalleled organizing skills became more critical after we had Helen. He began to work with friends and with me even before her birth to customize a pillow that he could use to hold her. He wanted to prepare in any way he could ahead of the first year of her life and at every step of the way after that. As we moved to Scarsdale and Pete faced increasing physical challenges, there were other coping mechanisms for dealing with his disability too. Most recently, faced with the reality that running groups and counseling clients was becoming physically impossible, he found an opportunity. Dawn, the organization for which he worked, had a terrible website failure. Someone hacked it. All of their clients were being routed to a check cashing facility, and Pete said, hold on, I can fix this. He didn't really have any web design background, but he figured it out. He rebuilt the site from the ground up, taught himself the needed skills, and landed a job as their webmaster and information person. His love of learning sustained him in this way. It also sustained him as he read more than almost anyone I knew. I went through his library e-records when I was writing this because he would borrow books electronically. And in the past 6 months, he read everything from Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians to the history of money from bartering to banking. It's quite an eclectic reading list, and certainly more than I think I would take on. But he and I did share this love of learning, and I'm delighted to see that it's been passed on to Helen. From the time Helen was just a few weeks old, Pete and I would read to her every night. And there are some books that they would read together that I wasn't into, and some books that I would read with her because he just couldn't hear them one more time. One book all three of us could always agree on was called The Boy Who Was Followed Home. It was Pete's favorite among Helen's books. A far-fetched tale of Robert, a young boy who finds that a hippopotamus comes home with him from school. The next day, the number of hippopotami grows exponentially. Eventually, there are 44 hippopotami on his front lawn. Pete enjoyed the description of the initially bemused Robert, a boy who really liked hippopotami and maybe wouldn't have minded just one or two. Pete, I think, was like Robert. He would have liked having a friendly hippopotamus or two follow him home. Not just because he loved nature and animals, but also because he appreciated the absurd and the crazy. And if a hippopotamus had followed him home, and we had eventually gotten to the point where there were 44 on our front lawn, I think we would have figured it out. because there have been so many other strange things and challenges that we've taken on in the past decade that I'm sure that with the support of everyone who has been around us and Pete's planning and smarts, we would have solved it. Thank you.
Love is playing in the garden. Love is drinking hot cocoa out of the same cup. Love is giving away your secret checkers strategy. Love is playing family. Love is reading together, even chapter books. Love is starting a scrapbook together. Love is listening to recorder practice. Love is watching me swim. Love is nature walks where you know the name of every bird. Love is ice cream on half birthdays. Love is playing 20 questions even when the answer is capybara or jackaroondy. Love is making experiments together. Love is going outside with me, even when you have to wear 2 ponchos. Love is being excited when you pick me up from school. Love is my dad. Love is hugs, kisses, snuggles, and robots before bed.
It's a very tough act to follow. When I first read this post from Peter's blog, I was mystified. Peter had managed to express what I could not, a painful truth of the human condition. Death does not end love. We cannot erase the past or return to it, so we must embrace the dualities of gratitude and grief. I commented on this post, "Ugh, this is perfect. You're perfect." Peter replied, plainly and Petely, "I try." And so, because he was perfect, and because it is perfect, here it is, Memories of Mortal Kombat. I had a dream the night after Thanksgiving in which I was talking about my brother with my mom. We were outside the church I went to growing up, the place where he was a Sunday school teacher and adult Bible study leader, the place where his memorial service was held. The sun was shining so brightly that it hurt my eyes. My mother said it was surprising that I wasn't spending more time feeling sad about Tommy's death, since it happened less than 5 months ago. I told her that I knew Tommy would want me to be happy, so that was what I was trying to do. Then I woke up. I realized I had been trying not to think about him. It was too painful to remember him now that he was gone. But Thanksgiving had brought so many memories to the surface. I was in Boston with my wife's family, and it reminded me of visiting them with Tommy, back when Jessica and I had only been dating for a short time. I also remembered all the Thanksgivings Tommy and I have had together. We used to play epic games of chess, a game we rarely played together on any other day. Tommy spent a lot more time playing chess than I did, but somehow I remained a slightly better player than he was. He played too aggressively, and I played a little too defensively. I usually won, but he was always eager to challenge me again. We also used to compete more physically, by fighting with each other in the pool. We were both very weak from muscular dystrophy, but we were brothers, and we liked roughhousing. In the pool, we could almost walk. We circled each other with a shambling, crabwise gait, always searching for an opportunity to strike. Tommy was stronger than I was, so he would raise his arms and send fists crashing down at me, aided by gravity. I kept my hands flat and used my fingers to jab him in the ribs or stomach. We fought hard and definitely inflicted some pain on each other. I couldn't raise my arms to block, so I dodged his punches with varying degrees of success. We must have looked kind of absurd. But to us, this was serious business. It was our attempt to be normal brothers, who beat each other up a little bit. Dysfunctional as it may sound, a little bit of restrained violence was a way for us to express our love for each other. There was a sort of tenderness to our battles. When one of us managed to make the other lose his balance, the other wouldn't press his advantage. When Tommy knocked me over in the pool, I would end up on my stomach, unable to get my head above the surface to breathe. Tommy would step away and give me space to roll onto my back and get myself upright. He watched carefully, ready to call for help if I was having trouble. When our roles were reversed, I did the same for him. We called it Mortal Kombat, but the game could more accurately have been called Don't Drown Your Brother. Fighting against each other was our practice for fighting as a team. Our ever-worsening muscle weakness was our common enemy. Though we exercised, explored alternative medicine, and never allowed each other to give up, we came to accept that there was little we could do to slow our physical decline. Instead, I pursued working and starting a family, while Tommy studied religion, sought a closer relationship with God, and taught children and adults to love learning as much as he did. We complemented each other well. He an optimist and a believer, and I a skeptic. We shared so much of our lives together that I was never able to imagine losing him, even though I knew it was a possibility. Now, the pain of his loss is all I have to remember him by. I will treasure it as a reminder of the time we had together. Thank you.
Peter and I shared a number of things in common. Calm demeanor in the face of crisis, an ability to shrug off difficulties, and an affinity for odd facts from science and nature journals. We're both fairly game and shared a number of adventures. I flew down to Houston where he and I cheered on Jessica and Misha in a half marathon. We had some really absurd moments together on family vacations, like when my mom insisted that we go to a small island off the coast of Maine to see something called the Galamander, billed as a key historic attraction, enduring a small rocking ferry ride that could have nauseated even the most veteran sailor, only to find out that we had traveled to see a large but rather unremarkable cart. Furthermore, the only accessible restaurant on the island was an outdoor sandwich shop, and we all had to eat wearing gloves. While a trip to Storyland in New Hampshire sounds like a fairly innocuous destination with Jessica, Peter, and Helen, who was 2, she was terrified of the rides, and Helen kept screaming for Papa, who was unable to assist, given that he was hours away, comfortably back in Boston. Pete, like everyone in our family, loved Spain and Spanish, and 3 years after Pete went on a study abroad program in Madrid, I arrived at the same program. Although he expressed how hard it was to be in Madrid, he had written that my desire to improve my Spanish won out over my fear of the unknown. He had a roller coaster ride of hopes and disappointments while there. First, just finding a helper who could go along with him, and then finding a wheelchair-accessible apartment, but finally landing in the elegant home of his hostess, Sigrun, who loved talking to Pete late into the night and was so impressed by him that she came to his wedding from Madrid. By the time I got to Madrid, the director of our program recalled that Peter had published a letter to the editor in the most distinguished newspaper in Spain. The letter begins as a straightforward critique of the access capabilities of the Madrid metro, but quickly moves into the realm of absurdity, as Pete describes being unable to ascend to the street at his usual accessible stop because they were cleaning the glass on the elevator, only to continue to the next stop, where they were also engaged in elevator cleaning. He details his Charlie and the MTA-like tale through the network of stations, only to learn that there is one morning designated elevator cleaning day, and they were all, therefore, temporarily out of service. Pete offers in the letter what he calls, tongue-in-cheek, a humble suggestion. Clean the elevators at night when they don't run. And Madrid actually subsequently changed its elevator cleaning schedule. Pete's encyclopedic knowledge extended well beyond Spanish literature. At my cousin's bat mitzvah in San Diego, the either radically optimistic or totally out-of-touch rabbi posed to the conservative congregation a question whose answer required some biblical background knowledge. The rabbi anxiously scanned the congregation of at least 200 people, hoping for an answer and some help. All eyes were averted to avoid being called on, but Peter rescued him, elegantly analyzing and contextualizing the quote. Pete really became a member of our family. He was very warm and always expressed his thanks for being included in all that we did. Jessica and Pete shared a wonderful nerdiness and were deeply in love. They shared the will to craft an original life, one that invented itself without too much worry about convention or pretense. They also shared a love of literature, a concentration that allowed for hours of board games, an affinity for binge-watching TV shows, and social and political views. When at large social gatherings, Pete's impeccable good manners and listening skills would find him trapped by older men complaining of sciatica or the economy. Jessica would see him across the room, approach the group, and invent an excuse for his extrication. But they were also yin and yang. Unlike Jessica, Pete was never reactive. He could ponder questions for hours,